Well, hi, everyone. Welcome back to another episode of the Everyday Educator podcast. We are so excited to have you here with us. And if you are not already involved in a classical conversations community, we want to invite you to go online and to do that because while meeting together here online is fun, it's even better in person. Today, I'm really excited because Lisa and I are going to be chatting all about how you know when your child is ready to start school. What do you need to do to prepare your child for foundations, and how do you evaluate that? How do you walk them through that process? So, Lisa, welcome to the show. How's it going?
Thank you, Delise. I am super excited to talk about this with you. We are kind of at the cusp together, oddly enough. You as a mom with Leo, and me with grandchildren I have a grandson about the same age as Leo. And so I have been looking at childhood readiness in a new way than I have in the last 20 something years or 30 years, maybe. Um, and I've been doing a lot of reading and a lot of observing. And so I'm super excited. And I will tell you this too, Delise. As my team has been working on the book that will debut next April, The Habits, um, the five core habits. Um, I have been thinking about this even more. And what does it look like at home? And how do those core habits that we've been talking about um, manifest themselves with our little kids? And what is it that we as moms and grandmoms are looking for? So I'm excited. This is going to be fun.
I'm excited too. Yeah. Before we get started, I think it would be good if we define our terms because I think sometimes, especially if it's your first, you guys know I have two now. So I've got one who's quote preschool age, foundations, scribblers
Hmm.
age, and then I've got an infant. And when I was first considering, is Leo ready to start foundations? Is he ready to start scribblers? I didn't even really know what I meant by the word ready. Like what does
Hmm.
it mean to be
Hmm.
ready? And so I think starting there could be wise because it does feel a little bit overwhelming when it's your first time. And you don't want to push your child into something that they're not, quote, ready for, but you also want them to grow and to learn.
Yeah.
And if you are planning to homeschool and you know that you've been planning to homeschool, you kind of have already been doing that. So, how do you know when it's time to flip the switch and say, okay, now we're going to go from just learning at home and exploring to school, sitting at the table doing schoolwork? Lisa, I know what I think, but what do you think? How do you know when you're ready?
Well, this is really interesting. When I went to school, it was not homeschool. Nobody my age pretty much was homeschooled. And so going to school meant that you had to be prepared to be away from your home for 6 hours a day, that you needed to be able to take instruction from somebody else, another grown up, that you needed to be able to sit for substantial in public school, even for kindergarten and first grade, they expected you to be able to sit for substantial amounts of time. I'm talking 20 to 30 to 40 minutes without getting up and moving around. Um, you know, you had to be prepared to copy things off the board, which doesn't sound like a big deal, but that's a child that has to be able to look up and see far away and look down and refocus and then look at a page. That's huge. And even knowing where to start and stop when you do that. But that's way more than what you're asking about with Leo. So, can Leo, can Gideon, my grandson, sit for 5 to 10 minutes and be absorbed in an activity that he finds fascinating or that you find fascinating and you're introducing him to? That's what we're talking about. 10 minutes at a clip. Um, you are looking for somebody who is able to follow you when they're just listening? Can they follow a simple command, not a multi-step? Okay. So children learn first to follow simple directions like bring me the washcloth or take this book to daddy, not take this book downstairs and find daddy and give it to that's multi-step. And so a little child who's not ready will take the book and start downstairs but become absorbed in the ladybug crawling on the wall. And then all that go to daddy and find him and give him, that's gone. But it's not really the child's fault that you gave him too many steps. So, can your child follow simple directions? Can their attention be absorbed? Are they able to listen? Can their eyes track on a page? When you start reading to your child, you're probably just telling the story and they're just listening. But as they get older, you can put your finger on the page and you're not saying, look at this, connect this sound with this word. You're just starting by making your finger move across the page. And they are beginning to internalize that we read from left to right and that those squiggles on the page have something to do with that story I'm enjoying. Those are the
Yeah.
kinds of things.
Yeah, I would definitely agree with you. I feel like, at least for the millennial Gen Z mom,
Yeah,
it's so funny to try to navigate those things because we know, okay, we need our child to be able to sit. But it's true that in a traditional school setting, the amount of time that a child
it's
would need to sit
crazy.
is much different, right? 5-10 minutes is really all it takes. I mean, to finish a
Yeah.
whole workbook page if you're going to do
Oh,
workbook.
yeah. Oh,
So
yeah.
if they can
Or
sit,
or yeah, or a whole you will want them to attend to something that you put on a big whiteboard.
right.
5 minutes is way plenty of time to notice that, look, these 3 lines together make this letter. It's a letter that you have in the alphabet song that you know. That's an A. Really? And so make some more A's. Do you want to make an A and let
Mm-hmm.
them trace it with a whiteboard marker or even erase it with their finger?
Yeah.
It
Mhm.
takes 5 minutes. It's
It takes
nothing.
5 minutes.
Yeah.
Exactly. And I remember feeling a little bit daunted, even though it only takes 5 minutes, when I knew that I had, a 1.5-year-old who is very exuberant and was bouncing. And I thought, okay, how am I going to
Yes.
practice this? And honestly, I started with like a few seconds. And
Yes.
I don't know, I
That's so
hope that's
excellent.
encouraging, right, to
Yeah.
people listening, in the same way that you're practicing teaching independent play. That was something else that I wanted to make sure my son knew how to do. I'm also a full-time
Yes.
stay-at-home working mom. So I knew that my children needed to have strong skills in independent play, which is very good for your brain.
Yes.
But some kids don't know
Very
how to do
good.
it. They don't know how to sit by themselves and come up with something to do for, 30 minutes to an hour and to not destroy something, while they're doing
Well,
it.
and open-ended toys are great for
Right.
teaching that. So give your child things that can become other things, like
Mhm.
blocks or dolls or pieces of cardboard. I told my grandson over the phone, "Oh, Lolly's got some cardboard for you," because a broom handle becomes a
Anything.
reacher or
Sword.
yeah,
Yeah.
all kinds of things. And so I said, "Lolly has some cardboard for you," and he was so excited that I had
Mhm.
cardboard that he could make anything he wanted. So
Exactly.
open-ended toys are great for that independent play encouragement.
100%. And even, my mom was laughing at me the other day because with my
No.
infants, I set them up with a book when I put them,
Yeah.
down in the pack and play or something like that. I give them a book and then I give them a little open-ended toy. But the
Yes.
book to my son now, he's learning to read, and we're getting a little bit of traction there. But he's always had the book, so it wasn't new to
Right.
him to be given
Right.
the book versus mommy reading the book. He's always felt like,
Yes.
well, I have my own books that I love
I'm
to read.
reading. Yes.
Exactly. I'm reading. And so I think even those little things are ways that you can help your child to subconsciously learn to sit still and then
Right.
subconsciously learn to follow the directions. When you go to the doctor, they'll ask, can your child follow 3-part directions? And
Yes.
so that might give you the impression that they need to know how to follow 3-part directions before they turn 4 in order to go to school. But I'm hearing you say, Lisa, that's not necessarily the case. So just
Right.
sort of tempering those expectations against
Mhm.
reality uh,
Mhm.
can be really helpful.
Yes. And and cutting yourself and your preschoolers some slack.
Yeah.
Their minds are still developing, and you don't want to squash the wonder of finding the ladybug on the wall, and is it going to go up or is it going to
I
go
totally
down?
agree.
Yes. So, yeah. So just give yourself and your preschoolers some grace.
Yeah.
It's not a race. It's
Mhm.
absolutely not a race. They will learn. And what we want them to do is enjoy the journey, not
100%.
just get to the end.
Something else that has been really important to me, and I'd love to hear your thoughts about it, has been emotional development. I think
Yeah.
we're living in a generation that's a lot more aware of their emotions and specifically naming emotions, just the
Mhm.
ability to name it. You don't even have to know what to do with it, but do you know what you're feeling? Can you identify, I'm feeling this, so that we can maybe
Yes.
talk about a need or what to do with it? And so, especially when he was around two to three, that's where I focused a lot of my energy, was giving
Yes.
pictures of a feeling and talking about, or looking around and saying, how do you think that person's feeling? How do you think that made that person feel? What if that happened to you? Because those types of mental exploration exercises can really help now that we're doing quote unquote school and he
Right.
feels frustrated or sad or excited.
Right.
He's
Or
got that.
tired or
Yeah, or tired.
bored. Yeah.
Exactly. He's got that vocabulary. And I'd love to know, how did you teach your girls some of that just emotional intelligence and those things that they needed so that they could understand a story? The person in the story's feeling sad, but what does that feel like?
Yes. Oh gosh, Delise, you're doing such a great. Can I just tell you that you are such a great mama to your
Thank
boys.
you.
You are doing an amazing job. I think that the very first thing I would say is that you want to validate their feelings. I can remember hearing moms say, and maybe being told this, um, don't say that or don't act that way or that's ugly or that's not okay. Think about these precious little children, these 3 and 4 year olds sometimes have really big emotions and they bubble up and they come roaring out in a thrown toy or a batting back at another child or a big yell. Think how scary that is for that little person to have all these big feelings. It is nerve ending response. It's emotional response. That has got to be terrifying. Like I am not in control of my body anymore. And so I think it's really important to validate. I can see that you are super upset or wow, you seem to be really angry or I can feel your body shaking. It seems like you might be scared. Are you feeling scared? Are you feeling anxious? I can understand how that is because immediately it lets that child think, okay, so I'm not crazy. It's not all about to end. This is something that somebody else has felt before. And that is super good. It's okay, you don't want them to stay that way, but you want them to understand this is normal, this can be handled. And so let's take some deep breaths, right? Or let me hold your hand. Or why don't I know you're feeling really angry and you don't want to hit your sister? Why don't you squeeze my hand really hard for a minute? Um, you know, uh, Sometimes you send a child away to yell into a pillow. I mean, they are having this response and they have to do something with it. So, yelling into a pillow is usually okay. You do not expect a 3 or 4 year old to be able to mask their feelings all the time. You do expect them to not hurt other people with
Yeah.
those feelings. And so, you can say, you can be angry, but we cannot be unkind. You
I was
know,
just thinking about that verse, be angry and do not
and
sin.
do not
Yeah,
sin.
and how
Yes.
the Lord always offers a way of escape. I think that's something that I've
Yes.
really had to challenge myself to do, and I'm
Yeah.
still working on rising to that occasion, because it's often the case that I want you to not do X, but I haven't thought long enough to think of what I do want you to do. How can I
Yes.
invite you to a more productive behavior? Um,
Oh, so good, Delise. So good. I know that I was with my grandson Gideon and his little sister Grace this past weekend, and they were having a high old time playing in the dirt. And they did really well for a long time together, but it was getting late in the day and they were getting tired. Um, and a problem ensued when they were both trying to play in the same bucket. I had been telling Gideon, you cannot put your hand where I am digging with a tool because hands and tools, that could be a bad thing. And so he would come back with his tool and Grace's hands were in the bucket and he was getting frustrated. And so she is 18 months old. So taking turns, that's not a big thing in her world yet. And so eventually he got really angry when he came back and she yet again was having his turn and he threw his little digger. And I said, okay, we need to stop for a minute. You are you seem really angry. I saw you throw that, and I feel like that's because you're angry. I am so angry. Why are you angry? I don't want to share. Grace is always in my space. And I said, okay, I understand. That would be very frustrating because you are playing something so nicely and this is bothering you. But you cannot throw things because you might hit somebody else. So what else could we do? I don't know. I don't know. I said, okay, so let's take a deep breath. Let's look around. What else do you see? What could we do? And he said, well, I see another bucket. And I said, what if Lolly filled that bucket and that was a Just Gideon bucket? And he said, I would like a Just Gideon bucket. And I said, okay. And so he played for a while. And I said, Gideon, what I want you to know is that there is almost always something else you can do. So you should stop and look for what else. And if you can't find something, ask a grown up who loves you to help because we will find another way. And so he seemed to actually resonate with that. And as the weekend wore on, I saw him do that. He would get frustrated or his plans were thwarted. And he would look for what else could I do? And so that was really positive. And I did not think anybody else was looking. But my husband said later on, he said, wow, that was really good. I am going to start using that with the people. He said, I think that would even work with grown-ups. And I said, yeah, it works with me. If I
Uh-huh.
can teach myself to, when I'm angry or frustrated, or just super tired, what else could be done? And it doesn't mean that we're not expecting a 3-year-old to be a problem solver, but we are planting the seed that a
Mhm.
3-year-old could potentially solve his own problem.
As part of a classical conversations community, your children are learning to be thoughtful, winsome representatives of the truth. Maybe you and your family would relish other opportunities to grow in faith and in the confidence to share that truth. For 60 years, Summit Ministries has equipped and supported generations of youth as they embrace God's truth and champion a Christ-centered worldview. Summit student conferences provide clarity, hope, and confidence to follow Jesus boldly. Mentored by top Christian thinkers and speakers on big questions of the day, such as dating, economics, abortion, gender identity, evil, and finding God's will, families, students, and even challenge classes can join online summer conferences or attend in-person 2-week camps for a life-changing experience. Visit summit.org/CC before March 31st for early bird pricing and get an additional $250 off an in-person camp or conference by registering with code CC26.
Exactly. And I love that. I love that your husband just pointed out the universal aspect of that. Because as I was listening to you tell that story, I thought to myself, this is a universal concept.
Gosh, I
If you're
know.
listening right now and you don't have a little one, a toddler in your life, just know that this can be applied to middle schoolers. And what we're about to
Yes.
talk about, even, I remember someone I love, they were teaching a teenager and they didn't have a few of these skills we're going to discuss. And she had to go back and work on them in a very physical way to help the child with their school.
Yes.
So it doesn't really matter how old you are if you're dealing with emotions, if you're dealing with learning
Yes.
something or having a learning block. It could still be the same thing that a 3-year-old needs to develop, and that's okay. We're human, you know?
Absolutely. And there are a lot of sensory things that could be done with 3 and 4-year-olds that maybe somebody missed, and they actually need to go back and experience some of that sensory learning, no matter
Mhm.
how old they have become, in order to
Exactly.
move forward.
In
Good,
order to
really
move
good
forward.
point.
And so one example I'm thinking of is with handwriting. And I know a lot of boys get a bad rap for the handwriting thing, but some of what is happening there is on a neurological level, and it's the proprioceptive input and just the ability to grip that pencil in a specific way.
Yes.
And if you haven't had enough practice holding something small and doing something
Yeah.
finicky, then it will be uncomfortable for you. And you could have a child who simply doesn't like to write. And it's not because they don't like the idea of writing, it's because they're not accustomed to holding something small and pressing for
Right.
that long. And so I did a lot of research. You can do a lot of research too on Pinterest or wherever, just for activities, little things that I could have my son do. Like picking up rocks and sorting them is working
Yes.
on that fine motor, but also proprioceptive, that pushing something and knowing not to hold it too hard or it will
Right.
collapse, or you'll hurt yourself.
Right.
That's
Right.
them practicing those little skills. And that's why teaching your child to color, even if they don't understand about the lines, is useful to them because they're
Right.
just practicing holding the crayon, so color
And
away, honey.
Yeah, and how tightly can I hold it?
Uh-huh.
Yeah,
And what position is comfortable? Exactly.
yes. You can do that. You can even do that with different kinds of pasta because you know what will happen if you hold the noodle too tight? It breaks. And so you learn there's different shapes and different degrees of fine motor skills. There's all kinds of play. Doing puzzles is a great pre-reading. It teaches the left to right thing and it teaches the correspondence. You were talking about sorting rocks, even the one-to-one correspondence. It is digging a neural pathway in the brain that helps them understand that a letter and a sound, that's a one-to-one correspondence. And you think, oh, that's not seriously a thing. It
Yes, it
seriously
is.
is. It is a reading readiness activity. They have to begin associating and matching things up before they're able to read and write.
Mhm. And you know what? In the process, they're also learning a sense of accomplishment. The phrase in my head is the payoff. When you work on
Yes.
something, it feels good when you've accomplished it. And something that I'm noticing my son loves and needs more of is just knowing I can do a good job. It's worth it. Like
Yes.
the hard work is worthwhile
Yes.
because I like the payoff. One of the
Yes.
things on my list this year for him is I wanted him to be able to clean because I was pregnant. I didn't want to touch
Yes.
anything knee down.
Oh, that's so
Like if it's
good.
below the knee, it's dead to me. So you
That's
got to
right.
get it.
That's right. You got to
And so
clean up.
exactly. So that was our concept. But now while I'm, putting his baby brother down to sleep, that's his job. And he feels so proud of himself. I think I've mentioned this on the show before, but part of that, I did it not just so that he could clean up, but so that when we're working on something else that feels so unsurmountable to him, I can remind him, hey,
Yes.
there's this other thing that you do all the time. And at the beginning, you always tell me it's too much for me. I can't handle it. And then you do it. And I don't even walk you through it. You can do it because you can do hard things, but I think little kids do need those small places and markers in their lives so that they can remember that they can accomplish something challenging, because some things that we are asking them to do in school are new and they can feel
Right.
overwhelming and they can
And
feel easy plus one, a little bit much.
yes, and they are too hard at first. If it wasn't too hard at first, you wouldn't be moving on to that. We're always wanting them to stretch. I love the easy plus one. So if it's something they already know how to do, add a little bit more to it. That's a little bit of a stretch. Otherwise, um, they're just like us, only shorter. They get lazy. They get
Yes.
lazy. And there's what's the fun in doing something that you already know how to do? Um,
Mhm.
and so I think, yeah, giving them a challenge. And it's really hard not to do for them sometimes what they aren't doing well by themselves. But look, anything worth doing well is worth doing poorly at first. They've got to be okay. And we need to help them see that just because you didn't do it as well as mommy doesn't mean that you shouldn't do it. Um, you can do it and you'll get better every day. But the way you're doing it is fine for now. That was a success because you tried it and you did it. And
Yeah.
that's a great thing.
Yeah, exactly, and being able to receive that feedback, that was another milestone I had in my head was, I need you to be able to receive my feedback when I say, "You did a good thing, and we can get better," and that
Right.
can't crush you. So how do
Yes.
I learn as a mother how to give you feedback? Because I don't know how to give you feedback because 'cause I'm new at this, and how do you learn as my child to receive my feedback and to keep striving for excellence so that we can grow together, and I'd love to know your thoughts on that one too, Lisa, because as a homeschool mom, you're mommy, you're the nurturer, you're the one who has the food, you're the lead learner, you're the instructor. um, and so sometimes giving that feedback is not the most intuitive thing, if I can be transparent with you, to do. So, and you had two very different children, which I love. So, how did you navigate giving honest feedback to your littles? And as they grew older, how did you navigate that as they grew older? Just knowing, okay, I'm going to give you this honest piece of evaluation. And how did you make sure it was going to land in the right place in their heart?
Mm, it's really hard. And Delise, I'll just be really upfront and honest. You will get it wrong you'll get it wrong a lot because our children, no matter what we think, no matter, you can look at your child and think, oh, we are alike. And maybe you really are. But they aren't you. And they won't necessarily receive everything the same way that you would receive it. And you won't get it right every time. Um, I think, there were times when they would say, "Oh, I can't do it. I can't do this," or "I don't want to do." And a lot of times it was, "I don't want to do this." And so I would say, okay, well, let's do this little piece of it. And let's do this piece together. Or why don't you do this while I do that? And then it became a game. And then we were able to do it together. And then I tried to ask them questions when they were little. What do you like about having the room clean? And, sometimes they said nothing. But a lot of times they were honest and they said, "Well, I can find my things." Or actually one of my daughters said it makes me feel calm when everything is in its spot. And so that was good. And so I was able to say, "Well, look what you did. You were able to make a room that lets you feel calm. You did that for yourself." And so that was really affirming to her. I had one who was much more whose feelings were more easily bruised than the other. And you have to get to know your children. Some children don't want you to beat around the bush. They just want you to tell me this was right or this was almost right. And I usually, all the praise sandwich where you say a good thing and then a thing to improve and then another good thing. I had one who would just say, just tell me, mama, just tell me. And so I would say, this is what I like about what you did. And this is what I suspect you aren't happy with. You tell me, were you happy with that? And a lot of times she would say, well, no. but I know that you're not happy. And I said, well, I'm not happy that you've disappointed yourself. So what can we do? What can we do? I liked to make the schedule be the bad guy instead of mama be the bad guy. But that means you have to get their buy-in. So you tell me what it looks like when this shelf is clean, or when when your room is clean, what does it look like? And then we would talk about the list, short list, the dolls are on the shelf, the books are standing up straight, there's nothing on the floor, my pillows are all picked up. And so that became the checklist. And as they got older, it changed. But I found the more I had them participate in the making of the rule, or the making of the plan, or the making of the schedule, the more it wasn't me always telling them what to do. It was the plan we made together that was calling the shots. So.
I love that. Ladies and gentlemen, I hope that you heard it, especially as a home educator, because I think that differentiation for those who do educate their children outside of the home, it's easier. It's like, oh, your teacher assigned this, so we have to get it done. Oh, the bad guys
Right.
right? But when it's you, it can be challenging, and it doesn't need to create distance in your relationship. And so I love the idea of, number one, getting their buy-in so that you understand that they understand, but also
Right.
kind of looped into the agreement at that point. And then also making the plan the bad guy, because we all know the standard right now. I've got this little checklist with dots for Leo, and it's simple stuff. It's like,
Right.
stay in your bed,
Yes.
dots. Open your eyes, stay in your bed. Use your words and hands for good. Study your
Yes.
ABCs and 1, 2, 3s. Because when we first started, he didn't really understand what I meant by school. So I had to
Right.
call it something else.
Right.
Eat your food when I ask you to, with a good attitude. But
Mhm.
because he's got buy-in, and for this, he's got a treasure box at the end of the week. So we get all the
Yes.
dots, we get a treasure. It's
Right.
awesome for everyone.
Right.
But I never thought about it the way that you were saying it, Lisa, honestly. And the fact that when we use that, when I refer back to that list, suddenly it removes mommy as the one who's telling him,
Right.
we agreed. This is what we're doing. This is
Right.
how our day goes. We have a schedule. We have a routine. It's Monday. We XYZ. That's a non-negotiable.
Right. Right. And doing these things means that our family has time to do this at the
Right.
end. So if you help do the cleaning up, then mommy has time to read 4 books instead of 2 books, or mommy has time to kick the ball with you instead of having to put your clothes away. So it's a win. And when they see that their effort makes a difference for the family, that makes them feel really good about themselves. They have done a good job. It is part of what being a family means.
Mm-hmm. We're a team.
We work together.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
We work together. We're a team. We do it together. I have loved so much just hearing your perspective, and honestly asking me some of my own personal questions. How is my school readiness going?
This has been really fun to me too, to hear your stories about Leo.
Oh, I'm glad. And I hope you listeners have enjoyed this. And just as a brief recap, define readiness for yourself, because in your family, a child may be ready at 2. My mom went to school at 2 and she was reading at 2. A child may be ready at 3 or 4, but that is something that the Lord is going to have to show you. And it's something you're going to have to identify in your child. So what does it mean to be ready? And if you don't think your child is ready to start school in a more formal sense, then what can you do to help them rise to the occasion? Because there are always things that you can do. And maybe the distance between them being ready and not ready are simple expectations that you could communicate to yourself and to them.
Oh, yeah. And the space between ready and not ready, sometimes from one milestone to the next, is a long time. And sometimes it's like this. And you think, oh, they're never going to be ready. And then next week, they make this huge physical or emotional or social leap. And you don't always know. And every single child is different. I mean, with my oldest teaching her to read, I thought I was the best homeschool mom ever, because it was like reminding her of something that she knew already. She would get this faraway look in her eyes, and then she would just read this word that I knew I'd never taught her. So I thought I was the ace homeschool mom. And when it didn't happen that way for my second one, I thought, oh, I get it now. It was her. It was not me. My first one was ready in a different way than my second one. But are they both brilliant women who have been reading for a long time? Absolutely. And the Lord did not leave any of us in our unreading pile. We grew they grew and they developed. And the one who read early was not as good at the fine motor skills. She, in fact, her 2-year younger sister was probably as good at fine motor skills as she was when she was 4. And so every child is different. The love that you have for your children is going to be what's the same in the equation. You're going to love them, and you're going to read together, and you're going to sing together, and you're going to do finger plays together, and you're going to march around together, and it's going to have a different effect on every child, and that's okay.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, Lisa, thank you. I know I, for one, am excited to get my hands on the habits on this new book.
Yes, I hope you'll love it.
I think I will. I know that I will. And just to dive deeper into conversations about this. And, I know that I probably do speak for everyone listening and just saying thank you for everything that you've invested in our homeschooling journeys. So we appreciate it.
It has been the journey of a lifetime. Just like we always say, homeschooling is the adventure of a lifetime. And when I started saying that, I did not realize how true it was. Wow. And it remains a great adventure, a lifelong learning adventure. It's what our family does together, and we love it.
Yes, we do. So if you guys have loved this conversation, I hope that you will share the show with a friend, somebody who needs a little encouragement. Maybe they need to see, oh, surprise, you're ready. You're already ready to homeschool. Make sure that you give this show a review wherever you listen to podcasts. And just by way of reminder, we are on YouTube. If you'd love to see us in a virtual sense, we are over there at the Classical Conversations YouTube page, and that's where you can find us. So we will talk to you all next time. Thanks for listening.
Bye, guys.